This is the Nerdrotic review of The Marvels.
What can you say, trying to get you to summarize this in a soundbite, about the direction of the MCU and kind of your vision going forward? Is there anything you want to clarify?
The Marvels comes out on Friday.
Fair and equal representation on film is incredibly important.
Put another gay diverse woman in it, make it more fucking lame.
So many different women and girls and boys and men will be able to relate to them.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude.
Of course, we were inspired by Kelly Sue DeConnick's runs of Captain Marvel in 2012 and 2014. She's wonderful. She's a creative consultant with us.
Stock just keeps going down and down and down. And then Bob Iger is all like, no, what's going on with my stock?
I don't know, does anyone want me to do it again?
Like many women around the world, watched Avengers Endgame and had that 6 seconds of all the Marvel women together. And I once had like chills, but I also was very annoyed. I was like, 2 hours of this, please. I'm from the Tri-State area. I was a big nerd. I loved Marvel heroes. And I wrote a lot of fan fiction.
Nerdrotic.com.
Greetings, you over 881,000 wonderful people, and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. You're not so bad either. The msheu has come full circle. Jerk. Been a long road to get here, and I've had this date marked on my calendar all year. And yes, YouTuber Christmas has come early because The Marvels has arrived. Now, I know the 5s and 10s of you out there who watched The Marvels did your homework in preparation. You went back and watched Captain Marvel, the billion-dollar patriarchy-smashing blockbuster, showing the MCU's most powerful superhero go through the hero's journey. What's the hero's journey? Well, Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel was great all along, and she was just being held down by an unjust system, which was, you guessed it, the patriarchy. I'm positive you went back and watched all of WandaVision, which introduced Monica Rambeau, whose origin was walking through a magical barrier while being positively affirmed. And her hero's journey was completed when she let a complete psychopath who tortured women and children go on and murder countless people in multiple dimensions for fake children. Then, of course, you have to rewatch Miss Marvel, based on the really popular character from multiple canceled comics, a show that received the highest praise from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes and the lowest ratings for a Marvel show on D+. And if you haven't seen it, then you missed her exciting origin, receiving a bracelet in the mail from her grandma. Oh, but we're not done there. Then there's Secret Invasion for Nick Fury, who was completely destroyed in the Captain Marvel movie when he lost his eye to a kitty cat, a story about a little boy Skrull who grows up to want to kill the entire human race because Nick Fury broke a promise to him. It's also about the once formidable Nick Fury embracing his strange kind of love, which is supposed to be an allegory for something, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
Well, how about that?
So after watching all that, you're ready to watch The Marvels, but once The Marvels was a disaster a long time in the making. Of course, Captain Marvel did great when it was sandwiched in between two of the biggest sequels of all time, and she was forced in with other heroes that we actually liked. But some of us recognized right away that Carol Danvers is just not that interesting of a character to warrant her own solo film, much less a sequel. And we were proven right, but as hard as Disney Marvel tried to spin, the ruse was up once we started getting the box office projections, and then the bad reviews came in from the critics that once protected Captain Marvel with their lives. It came out at 54% on Rotten Tomatoes, but of course there was a 3 a.m. ballot dump and it magically became fresh. But if you go to the top critics, it tells another story. Through Disney Marvel's push for representation, we now have 2 Marvel flops directed by diverse women. Now that's what I call progress. No, not that kind of entangled. According to the movie, our 3 heroes pursue Woman the Accuser as she tries to save her planet Hala by sucking out the atmosphere, the entire ocean, and a sun from 3 prospective planets. Suck. You thought I was kidding when I said Disney Marvel stole the plot from Spaceballs. No. But this plot device did bring us the headline of the year from the Irish Times. The Marvels review. The Marvel Cinematic Universe disappears up its own black hole. And it's all downhill from here. A fanfic Marvel employee, Sana Amanat self-insert, if you want to know more about that, check out this video right here, that Disney Marvel will tell you over and over again is an immensely popular character.
And when one comes in that grabs the world's imagination,
situation like this. The questions are, when are we going to bring Miss Marvel to the screen?
All three of these heroes are very popular from their previous movies and shows.
If popular means having her comic book continually canceled, appearing in the lowest rated Marvel show on D+, and being a lead in a video game that lost the company who made it $60 million, sure, I have a question. If Miss Marvel is so immensely popular at Marvel, why did you fundamentally change the character by changing her origin and her powers? In the comics, she's an inhuman with stretchy powers. In the MCU, she has vaguely defined energy powers that are not supposed to remind you at all of Green Lantern. Iman Vellani seems like a charming young lady, but
a black chocolate woman with big, kinky, luscious hair. We are out here.
Black girl magic! That's better. That's my quarter black magic in the editing room. By the way, no word on Monica Rambeau's dad. Considering this is the msheu, Maria Rambeau probably just made herself pregnant through female empowerment. Still, way to perpetuate a stereotype, Disney Marvel. This brings us to the men in this film, and yes, there are some men. There's body positivity personal assistant who has about 2 or 3 lines. There's man bun personal assistant who has about 2 or 3 lines. There's Prince Yan, that's from, he gets a few lines. He gets to fight a little bit, and he provides our heroes with a, I don't know what Samuel L. Jackson was smoking to sign on to Secret Invasion and this, but in the grand MCU tradition of memorable villains like Ghost and the Taskmaster, we have another gender and race swapped villain. And yes, they leaned into the South Park meme again, and not for the first time in this movie.
Put another gay diverse woman in it, make it more f***ing lame.
Still no word on whether or not she's gay, it's just assumed at this point. If you decide to torture yourself and actually watch this movie, which I know most of you won't, and you'll be better off for it, quick side note, apparently the Bengals are not nega bands like we initially thought because they are associated with Captain Marvel, but they're quantum bands which are more associated with Quasar. But I'm guessing Marvel just didn't want to use the name nega bands. But it gets so much worse. And then, of course, there's the little things that prove that. There's also the scenes where Carol Danvers clearly knows that if she uses her powers, she will switch places with young Kamala Khan. And she's clearly frustrated, but it's only because she keeps switching places and she doesn't give a crap that she keeps putting Kamala in dangerous situations, including one time taking off and flying. She abandons a bunch of Skrulls she could have easily saved on the planet that woman the accuser stole the oxygen from. And yes, it sounds stupid just saying that. By the way, because there wasn't enough diverse women in this movie, the remaining Skrulls are saved by, I'll give you one guess, Valkyrie, a diverse woman who's gay and lame. Just in case you didn't know, this is the Valkyrie from the comic books. This is the Valkyrie from the MCU. I know the resemblance is uncanny. Setting up the only Marvel movie anyone gives a shit about anymore. You know, the one with the Fox X-Men. In another post-credit scene, Iman Vellani's Miss Marvel is gonna set up possibly a mostly, if not all female Young Avengers, and I'm here for it. But considering recent events, I'm guessing we'll get a Young Avengers D+ TV show or film right around the same time we get a Shang-Chi or an Eternal sequel. And just to add to that, it's a film made by No Fun Marvel mommies for No Fun Marvel cat mommies. And they didn't even want to see it. There's not enough wine boxes in the world to make this okay.
This is not okay. It's just not.
From the well-known misogynist outlet, The Hollywood Reporter, box office bomb. The Marvel's opening to $47 million to $52 million in new low for Marvel Studios. The movie's performance fuels the theory that superhero fatigue is real. Well, msheu fatigue is real. If a pick doesn't deliver on every front, or any front in this case, we're gonna hear the excuses, we're gonna hear the spin, we're gonna hear the cope. But the fact remains, the jig is up. This pair of headlines, which turned into an unintentional meme, I believe sums it up perfectly for the Marvels and the MCU. Last time I checked, the highest grossing movie of the year was a film that wasn't made for me, Barbie. So it turns out the Marvels wasn't made for me or anyone else. The Marvels becoming a flop was a sure thing. Many of us saw this coming a long time ago and never had a doubt. It was just a matter of how much money it was gonna lose, and it turns out a lot. Nobody has a problem with women being in the MCU. It's how they're written, directed, and portrayed. And now that we're at the end of the MCU, although Disney Marvel doesn't know it yet, the only question I have left is, why does Disney Marvel hate women? That being said, representation does matter. We here at Nerdrotic have always believed that a diverse woman could direct a flop just as poorly as a white male.
Nerdrotic.com.
And if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book.
The industry has contracted, and we're very worried about comics right now.
On a side note, the feminist website Jezebel shut down after 16 years on the day The Marvels comes out. The world is healing. But ultimately, it turns out that Woman the Accuser is just an idiot. Just like with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Dysentery, where they were chasing a MacGuffin that was never going to help the villain achieve his goals, making the movie completely pointless. They do the same thing here.
This is the actual review.
You sit down in the theater and take in about 20 minutes or so, you realize you don't need to watch any of it, but you're still gonna feel like you're missing something, and you are. A story. Long before this film came out, when they demoted Captain Marvel in her own sequel. Simply put, it's a series of disconnected events with characters you don't care about in a short film that feels long. No expectations subverted here. It's fan fiction that makes fan fiction look bad. One thing I can tell you is that the 8-hour live stream promoting the Marvels, featuring cats running around and humans fondling pop vinyls, was more entertaining. Is it the worst Marvel film? Now, I know it's been 2 years since everyone forgot about the Eternals, but could it be that bad? Maybe, but let's give credit where credit is due. She comes off as a soccer mom in cosplay who is essentially a dollar store Ronan the Accuser, who we will call Woman the Accuser from here on out. From the first Captain Marvel movie, which none of you were insane enough to go back and re-watch, but is quite frankly better than this film.
Just a little bit.
Also, she could access exposition for the audience, one dumb Disney Marvel movie. Carol Danvers, our titular hero. Oh, wait a second. She's not the titular hero because she was demoted in her own sequel. The power entanglement, which is the characters switching places, only happens when they use their powers at the same time, except when they use their powers multiple times and the switch doesn't happen. Is it explained? No.
And I wrote a lot of fan fiction.
Unintentional hilarity mixed with abject boredom ensues. How does Woman the Accuser plan on sucking an entire atmosphere, an ocean, and a sun through a relatively tiny space hole? No idea. The space holes just suck. Like this movie. The Marvels features mostly characters you don't care about and one you used to care about, but we'll start with Miss Marvel, played by Iman Vellani. She becomes incredibly annoying in this, and no, it's not necessarily her fault. It's the fault of the inexperienced director Nia DaCosta and the horrible writers, and one of those writers is Nia DaCosta. And it's really sad when my description of how Kamala Khan got her powers, her grandma sent a bracelet in the mail, is exactly the same description the movie provides.
Where did you get that? Grandma, she sent it to me in the mail.
All right, now that we got the good parts of the film out of the way, and yes, that was the good, let's get to the rest. Teyonah Parris plays unnamed superhero. Is it Photon? Is it Binary? Is it Black Girl Magic? That gets my vote. Have no idea because they didn't give her a superhero name in the superhero film. Of course, she has vaguely defined energy powers that are described like this.
You can absorb light. I can see it.
And they describe her origin, quite as frankly, not as well as I did. And Teyonah Parris is wasted in this like everyone else. Her character only exists to spout off technobabble because we need women in STEM, like comparing the fractures in the space-time continuum to fracking. The musical scene, which is nothing short of the ninth circle of hell. That scene made me miss Prison. Costume change that look like they're designed by Helen Keller from the AIDS quilt. The once formidable Nick Fury is relegated to comic relief and herding cats. I wish I was kidding. His acting is atrocious along with most everyone else. He didn't even need to be in this film along with Kamala Khan's family, who were also supposed to be comic relief, but they're gonna leave you needing cringe relief. And yes, there are more cats in this film, and I'm sure they're all female. To be fair, they did a better acting job than the humans. The Marvels doesn't just pass the Bechdel test, it rewrites it. And now it's time to talk about potentially the worst villain in the history of the MCU. Zawe Ashton is horribly miscast in this role. She's about as intimidating as a yoga instructor and looks like she's a soccer mom cosplaying as dollar store Ronan the Accuser. Then there's the acting, the constant monotone voice that sounds like she's talking with scaffolding in her mouth, probably because she has scaffolding in her mouth. This can't be undersold. One of Woman the Accuser's goals is stolen from the movie Spaceballs, and the motivation for this makes even less sense, and it makes things worse. Despite all of the homework you need to watch it, you're still gonna feel like you're missing something because you are. The best Captain Marvel movie is something you'll never see. It was told in a horrible CGI flashback. because the true villain in this story is what should have been the titular character who got demoted in her own sequel, Captain Marvel. The Annihilator, who annihilated this film with her acting or lack thereof it. Brie Larson was just going through the motions in this movie, and yes, she is worse in this than in the first Captain Marvel movie. And I have to agree with my good friend Mahler's assessment. What there was of the Captain Marvel character was completely assassinated and then defiled. Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel is a dick. When she destroyed the Supreme Intelligence, she blew the top off of that building. I wonder how many innocent Kree died. She blew off poor little Monica Rambeau for 30 years because she felt bad about the genocide. That's right, Carol Danvers was completely aware that the Kree planet of Hala devolved into a civil war due to her actions and didn't do shit about it. This comes from a scene with Carol Danvers describing what happened to Hala, saying the air was poisoned and there was a drought. And the thing that's the most frustrating is we, the audience, had to sit through 5 minutes of some of the worst cinema I've ever seen, and it was inconsequential. Bad doesn't even begin to describe this film. It is abysmal. It's a dumpster fire. No, it's not necessarily woke. It is filled with intersectional feminism, but it's not as bad as Captain Marvel. What it is just awful. Awful directing, awful acting, awful editing. The CGI was horrific, and I'm guessing the catering sucked. To borrow a phrase from the great comic book girl 19, it's a film filled with
no fun Marvel mommies.
Narratively, it's a mess. As a matter of fact, it doesn't exist. It's like a poorly adapted coloring book. I'm sure people will be entertained by this, but I'm guessing those same people would be more entertained by a laser pointer than the cats in this film. How did Woman the Accuser get the universal weapon when it was clearly destroyed in Guardians of the Galaxy? Why couldn't King Valkyrie take in the scrolls from Secret Invasion? Did I miss the long history between Carol Danvers and Valkyrie outside of the few minutes they fought together at the end of Endgame? And we definitely missed the part where they hooked up. How the hell do you restart a sun by sucking another sun through a space hole? How did the entire population of a planet survive without air, water, and a sun? How did Woman the Accuser and Man Bun personal assistant breathe when they were clearly on the surface of a moon with no atmosphere? Who in the fuck thought it was a good idea to put a cringe-inducing 5-minute musical scene where its only achievement was to let the audience know what hell actually feels like in a Marvel film? What was in Woman the Accuser's face? Who thought it was a good idea to spend over $250 million on this movie, then actually make it, and then actually release it?
The rest of the nearly 25-minute long video is a scene-by-scene summary of the film. Hey Gary, who's the one spinning narratives, biatch?